Yeah, I have my pen ready.
Okay, thanks. Um, and so just to start, a housekeeping item of selecting a chairperson. I'd like to open the floor for nominations.
I nominate Rachel Chalesky.
I'll second that.
Yes. Okay, nominated second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And so I'll just turn it over to Kevin to take it away.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. I will post the agenda if that's okay. If I can find it. Okay, I thought I was posting the agenda. Okay. And if it's okay, because Kelly has volunteered to offer her expertise this evening, would it be okay if we started with the two special ed policies?
Of course.
Okay, so we have three policies for consideration this evening. One is policy 1312, 1312.2 in particular. And then also policy 6171 and 6159, two special education policies that require some potential revision and re-attention to, if you will. And then last but not least, I wanted to give the board an update on the CAVE audit, and maybe perhaps we can talk about collective next steps and a process and how we would like to move forward. But if we can start, I will select first on 6171. And Kelly and I, we had an opportunity to review this policy. Just wanted to make the board aware in my conversations with Kelly, and I would typically do this with anyone who brings expertise to these agendas. We will make a recommendation to the board. We will make a recommendation to the board. In certain cases, CABE will offer they will offer multiple versions of a policy. And so in this case, there's a version recommended. And then this one is only one, but 1312 has two options that they would like for us. I'm sorry, 6171, there are two versions they would like for us to consider. And so in our meeting, we will actually make a recommendation. We'll review both with the board, but we'll make a recommendation on which one we feel like is in the best interest of the board. So Kelly, you want to start with this one? Because originally there was an age change and recommended by CABE. Initially, in the old policy, this went from 3 to 21. And there was a request to revisit this because CABE has recommended that we update our policy based on this new change. And Kelly had some information for us that she also wanted us to consider. And Kelly, without further ado, I'll get out of your way.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me this evening. So as I think most of you are aware, I've shared at the Board of Education meetings that there was a hearing decision. It was a class action decision, which extended the age of eligibility for some special education students as determined by the planning and placement team process to age 22. And what that is supposed to be is through the last day of their 21st year. So that means that kids are eligible up until their 22nd birthday, which for some kids extends their time in school with us for up to 11 additional months. So it is important that we understand that and that we reflect that in the upcoming policies. One of the things that I will encourage the board to consider in reference to this policy is that Connecticut has accepted and given guidance that we should be providing services through that 22nd birthday. But there is current litigation going on in relation to that, so it could change. So one of the recommendations, and I have consulted extensively with with Shipman and Goodwin, which is our law firm particular to special education, is using language that says in accordance with IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the federal law, and state law. So to get away from necessarily specifying 3 to age 22, in case there is a change that could happen in relationship to this, we don't know, which would cause us to have to come back and revise this policy yet again, that we may want to put that we will provide special education services to students in accordance accordance with the federal law, IDA, and any state laws that exist. So that would just be one thing that I would consider in relationship to this policy. The other thing, Kevin, if you could scroll down, 2, 3, sorry, I'm counting the fourth paragraph. There is guidance here, and I am going to recommend to the board in the fourth paragraph, which starts with a child identified. I am going to recommend that we remove this from the language of the policy. The state and federal guidance is telling us that we must provide services up until age 22, not beyond that. And so that this would be something that is not obligatory to do. And therefore, I do not recommend that we put it in our Board of Ed policy. So I don't know if there's questions that you have in relationship to this. I would accept the policy in its whole. I would, with the exception of this fourth paragraph, which is not a requirement, which I would not put in there. And I would recommend, rather than specifying those ages 3 to 22, that we just say in accordance with state and federal law.
And you're not recommending that we do that same language for paragraph 4?
I would recommend it
She
throughout
is.
the policy, Kathy.
Oh,
Throughout
yeah.
sorry, thank you for your
Okay.
clarifying question. Throughout the entire, I would not list ages. I would do
Right.
it throughout the entire policy.
Got it. Thank you.
And I have a question. You said it was the
Sure.
paragraph that started with a child identified as? Or
Correct.
is it the one that we can see? Because I can't see that one.
Oh, I can see it on my screen. I apologize. It's the fourth
That's
one
okay.
down that starts with a child identified as a child with a disability shall. That one right there, I would recommend we strike out.
Okay.
And the rationale for
thank
that
you.
is that is above and beyond what we are required to do.
Right, and this was guidance that you received from legal guidance you received, right, Kel?
Correct.
Right.
So you want to put in there that it's per federal and state law?
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
And take out that paragraph.
That's correct.
Just take out the
Okay.
age.
Okay, yep.
So
I would
do I
remove-
understand?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Kelly, sorry.
No, I was going to say the highlighted version, Kate, I would remove in its entirety. There's no need for that paragraph. So Kevin, if you could strike that through. And then anywhere that it says from age 3 to 22, I would recommend that we say in accordance with state and federal law. Go ahead, Kate.
So just to clarify, Kelly, thank you. That just is to, save us a little bit of trouble going forward of readjusting this policy every time they make an adjustment on their end.
That is correct. We will always do what state and federal law and guidance is given to us. We are required to do so. And I just think it makes sense to state that in the policy so that if there's any changes in the future, it could happen in a year. It may not happen for 10 years. We don't know, that we wouldn't have to come back every time.
Makes
And it
good sense.
protects us if we don't reconvene in time
Correct.
while the
To
law
adjust
has to.
So
The
Right.
policy, yeah.
for example, the last time this decision got made was around the summertime. So if it took us until September, October, we would have a board policy that would not be in alignment with state and federal law, which would leave us, not in a good position.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I
Is
don't know
this
if
just
anyone, oh, sorry.
Sorry, is this just a one pager? Because we did not receive this in advance of the meeting. So could you, Mr. Walston, just read through?
You don't have both of these, Rachel?
No.
6171 and 6159?
No.
This is in the agenda, I think. Am I mistaken?
It was you had
It
to
should be
click on
here.
the link in the agenda, the blue link.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Kara shared this with I didn't share it directly. I think Kara Pompano shared it with everyone.
She
Mhm.
emailed us revised agenda on Tuesday. And the policies were linked on there.
Right.
So, yeah,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
I
Made me
didn't think-
nervous there.
I didn't think to click on the link.
Oh, okay.
That was my mistake.
Yeah, because I did it right after we talked, Rachel, yesterday.
Okay, I
Well,
see.
I asked Kara to do it, I should say.
And I apologize. I was coming from it that you had already read the policy. So if I was moving
Yeah, my
quickly, I'm
apologies.
sorry for that.
It's pretty straightfortable. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yes. No, I see it and it's entirety now.
Yep.
I feel better about that.
And so the appropriate language would read, Kelly, if I'm hearing you correctly, was between the ages of, and so this needs to be replaced with in accordance with. Okay.
That is correct.
And wherever it says that.
Throughout in every paragraph except for so in the second paragraph, the third paragraph, and then the last paragraph would have to be changed. And I'm happy to go in and tweak the wording to that. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was okay before I did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like we all are okay with that. Are there any objections from the committee?
No.
Okay.
I just have one other question. Kevin, every time we bring this to the board, it goes before us lately. It's gone before us to vote on every single time instead of the first reading, the second reading, and then we finally vote on the last reading. And when we vote on the first and second, I always feel like we're voting to accept it. And I guess I'm not understanding why we don't just put it on the board agenda for the first reading. And then people come back with objections or if they have any. And then it goes on for the second reading and everybody comes back with objections if they have any. And then it goes before the board in its final stages for a final vote. So why are we changing that?
I'm not sure what we changed.
We changed it to we vote on it every single time. The first reading, the second reading, and the third reading. And I always feel like we're voting to accept it on the first and second reading.
I think we're accepting the first reading as a first reading.
Right, but not as a vote to approve it. It was just
Right.
like, right.
But it
was never that way.
No, we didn't do it that way, no. But as long as we're understanding that, I don't know, I just feel like I'm voting to accept it. That's all, because it's never really clear that we're accepting the first reading. In my head. Could be just my head.
Well, I don't remember the discussion, but I do remember a board meeting. Kathy, actually, I think you raised this question.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it was resolved in the meeting
It
right
wasn't.
now.
I don't even
Okay.
think it was answered.
Okay.
It's just a question. I don't know whether it's something new
Yeah.
that came down that we have to vote on every single reading.
Yeah,
But-
it's nothing that I've introduced new. That's for sure.
It's
I mean,
just
in my
time-consuming,
experience,
that's
it's
all.
been first reading, and so it's first reading available for the board to review, but also for the public to see
Right,
and review, and then a
Right.
second reading for the board to review and this public to see, and
correct.
then if there is no updates, and then it's approved.
There you go.
So
Right.
you're still talking about really three readings. I look at and again we go back to the very first reading to bring it to the board. The board look at it, okay, and we accept that the board had brought this to the committee has brought this to the board. The second one is if there's any corrections to be made, then you
Right.
have to make a motion to accept those corrections, okay, as a group. This is my understanding from what we have been.
If there are any, yes.
A long time, Kathy, they used to just bring us the first reading, we look at it, accept it, and then the second reading, if there was no correction, we accepted the recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, did you hear me? Or I got
Yep.
shut off?
Yep, I
Okay.
heard you.
Yeah,
So-
that's my understanding as well. And I can go back and look at the bylaws and review that again just to make sure. I think it's actually we only need two readings, but I'll confirm and see what our bylaws say.
It's two readings and then you accept on the third part.
Okay.
But if you really think about it, if there's any correction that has to be made, you have to accept that at that second reading in order for it to come into the third reading where the full board accept the correction. Okay, we'll get it cleared up.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Kelly and I, we will make these updates as discussed. And I put some comments in these two areas for right now. So these sentences will be replaced with in accordance with state law.
I would
And
put state and federal, Kevin.
Yeah.
state and federal, okay,
Yeah, both. We have to follow both.
okay.
And it's stated again in the last paragraph.
Thank you.
I have my hard copy that I've wrote all over as well, so I will bring that when we do it.
Okay.
Okay, so are the committee members okay to bring this recommended version of this policy to the full board?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Any objections? Okay, so it passes. It will be on the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. The next one. And so the next policy is 6159. This is individualized instruction, and there are actually two policies for consideration. Kel, you want to start off with which one you want to recommend, and just, but we can, it's up to you how you want to handle it. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Kevin. So you'll see the first section is on instruction, and then the second section is on referral. So I am going to recommend that you scroll down a little bit to the second, another version of the policy. And the reason for that is the individualized educational program, the instructional piece. This reiterates what we talked about in the last policy, that the school district shall comply with all state and federal laws concerning the provision of free and appropriate public education to students with disabilities. This summarizes the previous policy that we just talked about that outlines the eligibility. So I think you can just move right into the referral process, which is really the intent of additional information in this policy. So I would recommend that, because we just went through the previous policy, and you'll find the first recommendation in the two paragraphs above are very similar to what we just talked about in policy 6171, that I think we can briefly summarize and then move into the next section, which is on the referral process. And again, the same recommendations here, rather than listing out the age 3 to 22. So now I'm in the first paragraph related to referral. I think it's the fourth line down, that we use the same language in accordance with state and federal law. And that,
Kelly, excuse me, could you make the lettering a little bit bigger for my old eyes, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Oh, boy.
Not a problem.
so I don't know if there's question. I can explain kind of the rationale behind this policy. This is letting families know that we are here to provide evaluations for students that are suspected of having disabilities. And again, those ages right now would be between the age of 3 and up to the 22nd birthday for certain students that were deemed eligible. And this talks about the process in which families are entitled to go through if they suspect their student or their child, of having a disability. It then reiterates that students remain eligible once found up until either they graduate or potentially up until the 22nd birthday. And again, that is determined by the planning and placement team, or PPT process. And because, as we discussed in the previous policy, that we know that is going through the Second Circuit Court of Appeals right now, that decision, that could change. And so I think it's best to just use the state and federal law as in accordance with state and federal law for the ages of student eligibility. In the event that changes, it would protect us and indicate to the public that we follow all state and federal guidance.
So Kelly, any piece of the first version or just the second?
I am just recommending the second.
Thank you.
Kelly, it's Joe. Just
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. We're required to do all of this stuff anyway, whether we had a policy or not, because this is just
You are
basically
correct.
setting out federal and state law anyway, right?
Correct. And so
Okay.
the legal guidance on this is, because we're required to do it anyways, less is more when it comes to this, and just reference your state and federal laws.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's
But I
always
didn't-
safest to do that.
I
The
didn't
more
need to
you
tell
say,
you
the
that.
harder. No, but the more you say, the more places you have where somebody can take issue with what you've said.
Correct. And because we know there's the potential for this particular guidance to change, I just think it's best and most advisable to do this.
Mhm.
I didn't know, Rachel, you had asked previously if I was recommending anything from the first recommended policy. Was there anything in the prior 2 paragraphs that you thought wasn't covered in the previous policy or later in this one?
No, I just for clarity. Are there any questions from committee members? Okay. Can we vote to move this to the full board as recommended?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any objection, opposition, concern? Okay, so moved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Cal. So the next policy, just going back to the agenda, is policy 1312, community relations and appeals. And this brings us to here. It is, so I just I'm sorry, let me first just make the board aware. We had a case a few years ago, an Office of Civil Rights case with the district. And one of the potential resolutions of that case, we had a family who looked to make a complaint about our extended learning program. And what we learned after the investigation, they didn't have a formal way. Their argument was they didn't have a formal way to file their complaint. As a resolution to the complainant, we agreed that we would have the board adopt a policy where our families can formally make appeals if they have an issue or concern with one of our staff members or employees in a district. And so community relations policy 1312 allows for that, provides that opportunity. And although this was not required as a condition of that agreement, there's also another opportunity for families to file a formal complaint with the superintendent regarding any board policies as well. So I want to share those two for the board's consideration. So this is the first one. It's pretty straightforward. For those of you who have seen it for the first time, the board encourages parents and Danbury families to express their concerns with the Danbury school system or its employees to the appropriate administrative personnel when motivated by a sincere desire to improve the quality of Danbury Public Schools educational program. Complainants should first present concerns regarding board employee performance directly to the employee involved in an event to resolve the matter with the employee directly. However, complainants not satisfied with the employee's response to their concerns may also feel free to communicate such concerns directly to the employee's immediate supervisor by completing and filing Form 1312, which I'll show you momentarily, Citizen or Family Concern Reporting Form. In emergency situations when complainants have a concern that impacts on the current safety or integrity of Danbury Public Schools or its students and staff, complainants may address such concerns immediately and directly with the appropriate administrators and or the superintendent of schools without regard to the prior procedures. When a complainant appropriately raises a concern with an administrator, the administrator will take the steps that he or she deems appropriate to investigate and to resolve the situation and to refer to it to the appropriate level of such investigation or resolution. Failure to do so will be considered a violation of this policy and could result in an appropriate disciplinary action. Here are some legal references, and then underneath, sorry, let me scroll down a little bit faster. And here's the form that will be made available for our families. And I'll have to speak to Kara P. and Gina and figure out where this can go on the district website so it's available for families. So straightforward form available, made available by CABE. Parents will include their name, if there are students involved, their concern, staff members involved, detailed statement, and they would submit that to my office, and I put it in there exactly who that needs to submit it to. So I just thought I'd start there for some reaction. Rachel, would you prefer that I walk you through the next policy now and just talk about both? You want to do one at a
I
time?
think so. It's short and sweet.
Okay. And so the next one after the form, and this is pretty straightforward, complaints about board policies should be directed to the superintendent of schools. Complaints shall be in writing and signed, stating the specific objections to the policies. The superintendent shall review any complaint and conduct whatever study or investigation he or she deems appropriate. The superintendent shall then submit the complaint and his and her recommendation to the board. The board may review the policy, amend or refer the policy for review if necessary, or repeal the policy if appropriate, and notify the complainant of the action taken. And then that's the end, kind of short and sweet. But again, they could use this same form to record their concerns in this, and here would be the procedure for that process.
Are there any questions from committee members?
Yeah, I got quickly, Kevin.
Sure.
The first policy, the 0.1 policy, as opposed to
Yes.
0.2. We don't have. Do we not currently have anything like this in place? Do we not currently have a policy about complaints?
So, Joe, we had a policy about complaints, but according to Cave, we didn't have this one. And when we were looking at this policy, we felt like this one was most appropriate to meet the needs of the complaint that was filed with us.
My main concern is just: are we inviting them by way of this policy? Are we making it?
Right.
Are we inviting complaints?
Right.
That's just my only question.
And I understand that, and I appreciate the concern too.
And just one thing on the second part of this, the second piece. The superintendent reviews the complaint and the policy and makes a recommendation to the board. The last sentence, the board may then review the policy, amend or refer the policy for review if necessary, repeal the policy if appropriate. The board may also do nothing. I think we need to clarify in there that the board doesn't have to do anything. Because the board establishes, the superintendent may recommend not doing anything. The superintendent may recommend changing the policy, and we may say no. I don't know. I'm not wedded to any particular language in there on how we do that. It may just be something as simple as the board may then review the complaint and the policy, and then either retain the policy or amend the policy or whatever. I'm not sure I'm wedded to the language. I can play with it a little bit and email it to you after the meeting.
Okay.
Or email it to the members and email it to you after the meeting if you want. But that was just my thought there is we don't have to do anything at all. And I think we may want to make that clear here. I mean, it doesn't say we have to here, or it doesn't say we don't have to or anything, but we should make it clear that we don't, just so it's not ambiguous. This way nobody screams and yells that we don't change something. That was it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Just wondering if we could clear it up tonight, though. So, it does say if necessary and if appropriate, and notify the complainant of the action or inaction taken. I'm not.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good.
I was just going to say if nothing is, if the board does not feel any action is required, they are not required to do so, or is appropriate, you could add a sentence.
I wonder if you could play with the language a little more simply though, and just say the board may then review the policy, amend or refer the policy for review if, if so determined, in other words, sort of leaving it under the jurisdiction of the board to make that assessment.
I'm sorry, are you saying determined period?
If so determined, period, yeah. I guess you'd have to add repeal of further.
And then how what would be the next sentence again? I can just bold it and see if you like the way it feels, and you can come back and change it.
A suggestion.
Mhm.
Now, this probably flies in the face of Kate's "keep it simple," because when was the last time a lawyer wrote anything and kept it simple? Maybe we just need an extra sentence to the effect of the board is under no obligation to accept the superintendent's recommendation and or change the policy as a result of the complaint or recommendation. That may be
That
more
works
than we
too.
want. That may be more than we
The
want to
board
say.
is of no obligation to change the
The board is
policy.
under no obligation to accept the superintendent's recommendation and or change any policy as a result of a complaint or recommendation. And I'm not wedded to that. Please wordsmith that to death, guys. That may be overly lawyering. It's been known to happen, you know.
So in this
That too-
scenario, then
is that
we would
too
take
much?
this out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it is. And it's got a negative connotation to it.
Yeah, it does.
It's kind of mean-spirited.
Yeah. Too
I'm
lawyer.
trying to make it unambiguous, but you're right. It's a little in your face.
Which is okay, but
We may want to, the tone may not be good.
The board may, it's a very, as it was written, it's not holding us to anything. It's the board may then
No, it's not.
review the policy, amend or refer the policy for review if necessary, or repeal the policy if appropriate, and notify the
in there
complainant of the
gives
action.
us an out.
How about the board may, comma, if it deems it, if it chooses, comma, then review the policy or something, or the board may, comma, but is not obligated to then review the
Not
policy or
obligated.
something like that.
Yeah. But not obligated to. Yeah, I like that.
Or they must consider, like you must consider it, but you're not obligated to do anything.
Actually, I don't think we can say must, because I don't think we can bind a future board on what they have to consider or not.
The board may, but not obligated to, review the policy and then refer the policy.
But is not obligated to.
Yeah,
I think we need the is.
but is not, yeah.
But is under no obligation to.
Yeah, that might work. It might be better. Thank you for playing Scrivener, Kevin.
It's not a problem.
Kevin, can I just make one suggestion?
Yes.
You stated here that it must be signed. I just think you need to put a signature line on that form so that
Okay.
people can sign it.
Okay. Okay, I'll add this.
And a date.
Yes, good idea.
I think in that sentence where it says the board may, comma, but is under no obligation to, I think we need a comma after the two.
Right here, Joe?
I think so. Does that read better?
Yes. Mhm.
think so. I think that works.
Okay. Okay.
And that's not as in your face.
And Kevin, when we spoke, you said you had looked around at what other districts had, and there were some similar to this floating around.
Right, right. So this one was actually similar to one in Ellington. For some reason, that one came up a few times when I was looking up policies on appeals, and and so I had, certainly used those. But this is straight from Cape. But Ellington, for some reason, is one that came up a few times when I continued to try to Google and do a couple of searches for the 1312. But there were a couple of districts that had both 1312 and 1312.2.
Were they similar?
Yes. Yes, they pretty much adopted the language from Cape. They did. Okay, so I will go back here. And if it's okay, I'll just say that we'll go to item number, I'm sorry, Rachel, did you need to speak to
Yes,
1312?
are committee members comfortable with bringing this to the full board? Can I have a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any obligations? I mean, obligations. Opposition?
Joe said we're not obligated.
Oh, that word on my brain. Okay,
We need
great.
like a lawyer's note, just like a mom's note or something. Right?
So this will go to the agenda at our next meeting for our first reading. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson.
All right, thank you. So the last one is Cape audit and next steps. I'm going to close this out so I can see and speak to you. We have, and it's been a while since we've, outside of our emergency policies, it's been a while since we have reconvened as a board to focus on policies. In preparation for this meeting today, I was trying to get in touch with Cape because for those of you who may recall, we had partnered with Cape, went in contract with Cape policies, Cape, to work on our policies. They conducted an audit for us. I believe it was 2019 now. We received the feedback from the audit, and they revealed, the outstanding policies. We were pretty much in, we pretty much had all of the policies that were mandated by the district, but they did have a number of recommended policies for us. They broke it down by series. And then as CAVE's process, they literally push out hard copies of the series, one series at a time. So I get hundreds of copies in my office. And now I have thousands of copies of my office because it's, they continue to mail them over the last several months. So I have reached out to CAVE and asked them if, number one, the policies that have already been approved, that this board has approved over the years, because part of the agreement is not only would they conduct the audit, but they would also post our policies online so that those could be reflected electronically. The agreement that we had entered in with them was once the entire series, all of the series are completed, then they would post it online. And so the question I have asked, and I just left a message yesterday, so forgive me. So I'm still waiting to get back to Vinny, but the question that I left for him is, can we start posting the policies that we already have approved, post them now, and then perhaps monthly we can update anything that the board has approved and continue to post that up online. That our online system to access the policies electronically, I would imagine, are a frustration for the public because they're frustrating for us as employees in the district. And it's really, we're kind of limited by our own system right now. And so we're asking Vinny to get some help. It's probably it could be at an additional cost because now they would be working to upload these things monthly. So I will find out what that cost might be. I'm not gonna suggest that he charge us more, but I'm anticipating that the cost will be more because it's very different than doing it all at once versus doing it monthly. But if it's okay with the board, I am going to ask Vinny what the cost would be, so at least all of our work can be reflected into into our database. And then after we, every month as we continue to complete policies, we can have them updated online for everyone to see. I also need to get some feedback from the board, and Rachel and Kathy, Ms. Cooper. So just before the board turned over and we had some new faces on the board, welcome. I remember Rachel and we were sitting in that conference room with a whole series of policies. I mean, I regret now, like I probably overwhelmed everyone on the subcommittee. That's probably why they didn't come back. And I brought hundreds of policies and had books for everyone. And then we start and aggressively, and I regret that now. I had a conversation with Rachel about this yesterday. And regretfully, I think tried to overwhelm, and it was a little bit too ambitious in trying to get too many policies approved at once. And so, but I do need to get a feel from this board, from this committee. What do you feel like we have an appetite for? Certainly some policies like tonight can move a little faster. I'll just say this quickly, and Rachel will probably smile when I mention this. We had a conversation with the previous board, and we had 3 meetings we couldn't agree on. Well, the committee couldn't agree on whether or not board members can participate electronically or not. And the committee felt strongly, some felt strongly they should, and some felt strongly that they should be there. And meanwhile, a year later, here all of us are, participating in this platform. But I don't want to. This is my long way of saying I don't want to introduce 5 or 8 policies and it be counterproductive. And so, is 5 a good number? Should we stay in the 3 to 5 zone? And I don't know, Rachel, maybe I think we had a good process going before. We can kind of review what those are. And so if you say, hey, we can do all 5, I think this looks good. And I just want to get a feel of what this board might feel comfortable, this committee might feel comfortable with.
I have my thoughts, but I'd like to open it up to others first.
Maybe it just depends on what they are. Some policies are going to be quicker than others. Some are short.
Yeah.
Some are, we got to do it anyway, guys. It's the law. Other ones, maybe it requires more conversation. So maybe we have to kind of pick and choose and cherry pick. There may be one where we're going to get one, if it's electronic access to meetings when we're live, that's going to engender a lot of conversation. Maybe that's the only one we do that month. If we have 5 that are like the ones we did tonight, we could have done 10 of these.
Right.
I mean, it's, no problem.
How good are we at predicting which of those policies are going to elicit that kind of conversation?
Well, that's the challenge now, ain't it?
So I wonder if there's like a procedural thing that we could do, Rachel, in the meetings where we say like, okay, we've had, X number of minutes of conversation and it seems like people are, we need a longer conversation about it. So we're going to table it. So that we have like a certain number that we line up each time. And then if we run into like a roadblock policy because, we're just having trouble working it out, we just table it. And
yeah, that sounds reasonable. Sounds like a good plan. Kathy, you had something to say?
I just think that as the chairperson, you know what our bandwidth is. You should, determine which ones would take a really long time to discuss and come to an agreement.
You can guess the train wrecks.
A good guess at the train.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that's some pre-work that Kevin and I can do before we bring it to the committee. I think like shooting for 5, but I mean, it all depends, and let's review them before we put the agenda together. And then if we have to table, we can decide to do that during our meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a good suggestion, Kate. Thank you.
Mr. Watson, since nobody asked me, I like the idea of 3 to 5. You keep your time within an hour, 15 minutes, and not to go over. If you feel like you're going to get stalemate, like Joe said, we just table until the next time. But work on 3 to 5 each meeting and see where we go.
Sounds good.
Okay. So 15 every meeting. You got it, Ms. Cooper.
5 hours straight policy committee meeting. I love it.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a very large
I'll have
coffee
it.
cup.
I'll have it ready. Absolutely. Thank you.
So,
And so we want to continue with I thought we had a good system, before everything came to a halt in March, a year ago. So if we could continue our once a month, first Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. And to continue the audit. Lost my train of thought. Was there anything else?
No, it was those three this evening. I'll have some more information from Vinny, and I can come back and see if there's an additional cost to that request.
Right.
See if we can get them posted immediately instead of waiting until they're all done.
Kevin, if they were going to post them for us anyway, they're still posting the same amount of stuff. They're just spending 20 minutes now instead of 7 hours in a year. So if they try to charge us more, maybe we push back on that a little bit.
Okay, I appreciate it, Joe.
Just a thought.
No, I agree. I agree.
May not go anywhere.
I agree. Nor does it make sense for a board to have to wait until the entire process is completed anyway. But Sal negotiated a really good price. So as he's really good at.
Great. Yeah, that'd be nice to have them online. It's our antiquated system is, frustrating for board members as well. And when I first came on the board, I was given a hard copy of some of the manual, but it wasn't complete, and I wasn't aware of that at the time. So I have some old policies, but I don't even know if they've been updated since then. So that would be nice to have and to easily navigate. So appreciate that.
I'll work on it, absolutely.
Anything else from committee members or Mr. Wilson, Mr. Giselle?
That's it for me.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Aye,
Aye.
me.
All
Hey.
right.